very good, and when he told me he already had someone to experiment with. What I'm not doing.
I know that your documentation is so
Good evening to everybody. Again. Now is the moment for the boring talk about acousmatic. So, what is acousmatic and why there is an acousmatic music? And it has particularities. So, I'll try to talk about all that in the shortest possible time. It will take evenings to talk about acousmatics. And actually, we're going to talk about music, sound, and perception. How we listen, how we perceive sound information. I will start with two short lessons. The first one is a short history of sound. So there's an unknown sound past. Nobody knows how it sounded before the end of the 19th century. We can imagine writers have written very little about sound, but what they were listening to. Victor Hugo, yes, he has a very nice poem in which he describes what he hears through the window of his office. And it's very nice because one can represent oneself through our imagination what he's listening to. 1877, invention of recording, a great moment in the history of sound. Probably the most important, in which it was possible, as with images and photos, to fix sound, to extract it from time, to extract it from its geographical location. Until 1877, it's an idea, it's not really like that, but if you wanted to listen to music, or to somebody, you have to be there in the right place, in the right moment. Recording and the fact of being capable of conserving the sound permitted the possibility to listen elsewhere first, transmission arrived before recording, and then something that had passed, and the real sounds as they were in the past. At the beginning, nobody knew very well what to do with sound recording. What could you use it for? Actually, the invention was with the objective to make dictaphones for very busy people who didn't have time to write things, so they would dictate and somebody would type it down. What we're doing today, actually. And little by little, it started developing, and the great mentor was the radio. The fact of being able of listening to something that is not happening here, and then to something that is not happening now. Our perception is very happy with that. If I listen to the radio, I imagine the guy is speaking to me now. And since I'm listening to it in my place, it's here and now, even if in the reality it was somewhere else. Then several developments, tape recorders, 1990s recording for everybody with cassette recorders, then production for everybody. Anybody who has a computer can make music. And then from the 2010s or 2020s, everybody is publishing and making music and putting it online and making small concerts, etc., etc. And the future, we don't know how it works. Now, a short history of music. You see, it's very contracted. No composers mentioned, just to not create any conflicts. So there are, let's say, 3 levels of music. Or actually, not of music, of transmission of music. The oral world, before writing. And what I'm saying with music has also to be with words. before the existence of writing, the texts were transmitted, or stories, let's say, via oral way. I say it to you several times, you memorize it, you transmit it to somebody else, generation after generation. Of course, it's not a very reliable system. It suffers small transformations. But the essence tends to stay. Many anthropologists have been researching on ancient stories based on oral tradition. What is interesting is that the oral tradition is still active. Music is transmitted orally. If you want to learn to play the piano, you need a teacher. A teacher is an oral transmitter. You won't learn the piano with a book. Then, let's say the 13th century, the second level, writing arrives. The fact of being capable not of fixing music, but of giving instructions to the people who perform the music on what to do in a certain moment. As somebody used to say, playing the piano is putting the right finger on the right moment on the right note. So this can be transcribed to a piece of paper. This radically changed the future, the evolution of music. Why? Because first of all, it was a more reliable transmission system. And then, for the first time, music became something visual. You could have a representation, not the music, but a representation of the music, which was the open door to musical complexity. Polyphony couldn't exist without writing. A brain cannot manage all the different levels of sound needed to work together. And then, following the previous story about sound, arrives what we call electroacoustic. You may give it any name. We'll go back to names in a moment. And the starting point is that recording permitted composers to organize the sounds as they wanted, with no rules depending on acoustics and mechanics and performers or nothing. And this famous sentence, media is a part of the music. So the fact of being capable of making music without instruments, without scores, just with machines. And this changed the evolution of the musical thought, because what is important here is not the technical evolution, but is how these changes influence the way humans think and make music. There's a vertical line there about the technical complexity. Oral tradition is very simple to transmit. Written tradition, you need paper and pencil, but when you come to electroacoustic composition, you need machines, you need a several number of things which tend to evolve and not stay stable. But that's another problem. So, what is an electroacoustic musical work? Any kind of musical work where sound is produced by technological devices with or without traditional instruments. It's a very large concept. The word electroacoustic existed before the electroacoustic music. A radio receiver was an electroacoustic device in the 30s, in the 40s. But this term was transferred to this kind of musical productions. In other words, that's the definition I used to give to my children. Composers invent the sound of their music. I'm not happy with the sounds of the instruments. I need other sounds, so I make them. And then, since I made them, I can control them and I can put them together. There are different models. Media music, all recorded on a media. That's what you have been listening to today. Media music and traditional instruments. On Thursday, we had a work for fixed media and flute. Sound transformation of traditional instruments. Somebody is playing and the sound is totally or partially transformed by some kind of electronic device. Media presents instruments with sound transformations, interaction between instruments and computers, synthesizers, samplers, any kind of technological sound-producing device. So it's a very wide, I was about to say wild, but it's a wide field, and wild also. Probably the largest musical practicing community, from techno to contemporary music. There are millions of people doing music, even if they don't present their music in concerts. Musical information is merged with the sound. No common codes, often unknown sound material for the listener. Here is we're getting closer to acousmatics. Then I just go quickly through this. Technology is used in many domains beyond music. Now we speak a lot of sound. So we had sound installations, virtual reality, video mapping, performance, video games, visual music, live cinema, bio art, electronic clothing. These categories represent different relations between sound and visual arts or technology. And actually, I took this list from an international contest where you could present your work in any of these categories, and there were prizes for them. Now, let's jump from music and sound to perception. How does our perception work? Some concepts related to perception. Perception is the process of attaining awareness or understanding of sensory information. I see something, it goes through my sensory machine, and my brain decodes that information and tells me I'm looking at Anton, eventually, and if I don't know Anton, I'm looking to a person. Perception tries to reduce the complexity of the environment. This is for me, it's a central concept. We don't perceive wildly, we perceive concentratedly. So now we are all conscious that we're in a concert room. We're not in the street, we're not in the zoo, we're not in the plane. And we organize our perception in function of the place we are in. More than that, if you arrive here and you see all the loudspeakers, you know something is going to happen. It's not a conference, it's something more serious, probably. Understanding information is based on previous knowledge and experiences. If I know I'm in a concert room, because I have been in other concert rooms. So I have sorry for this, a concept of a concert room. I know what it is. I have a concept of the street. I have a concept of a car. And I can organize my perception based on these, let's say, frames of information I have. So here I'm totally decontracted. There's not a car that's going to go by. If I go to the street, my attention is concentrated on what is happening in the street. This is how our perception adapts itself to every situation. And if eventually I find myself in a new situation, let's say it's the first time you come to an acousmatic concert, then you will try to adapt your perception to understand what the hell is happening in this room with so many loudspeakers. Do they need them all? Why is that one on the floor, etc., etc.? And then you try to capture the reason of things. Perception is based on recalling previous scenes that bear some resemblance to the actual situation. Previous scenes function as perception frames to understand new scenes. Our perception is extraordinary because just seeing a little part of something, you can imagine the rest of it. Now, let's go from perception to music. Listening to music. When we listen to music, we try to give sense to what we are listening. Music is just a series of sounds. It's absurd. Or what you're reading there is just a series of dots, whites and blacks, that make sense to your perception because you have the habit of perceiving. Now, our perception in certain situations, we were taught that way. When we perceive a series of sounds, and people walk around and make noises with their feet and etc., but they're very kind and they bring a glass of water to the conferences. Thank you, Anton. You listen to a series of sounds, as here in the concert. You know you're in a concert, and you try to make sense of what you're listening to. This happens everywhere. If I'm in a piano concert, there's somebody playing there, and my neighbor in the audience starts, I don't take that as part of the music, but as an external incidence that is having some disturbance on the music. So I select what I can listen to. But in a situation like this one, I try to make sense of everything I'm listening to. We look for information which may explain what we are listening to. And when we listen to music, we base our listening in what we have listened before, in our listening experience. And as I usually say, we are all professional listeners. We know how to listen. We know how to manage audition. We know how to interpret audio signals. And so we know how to listen to music. We have learned that after years and years of experience since we were children. But in the case of electroacoustic music, our capacity of understanding the surrounding world through sound is strongly put into action. It creates some tension. It's not the same thing as listening to the piano. Acousmatic sound, acousmatic music. Now we come to acousmatic. Acousmatic is an adjective used to describe a sound you listen to without seeing what produces it. Acousmatic music is music made only for our ears. Its causes are not visible and not often referenced. We don't know what it is. They're sounds. Composers invent sounds for the music based on recordings, sound processing, synthesis, anecdotic sounds. There is no rule. Each composer composes the sound of his music. What you have been listening to and what you will listen to after I talk is what the composers imagine as the sounds they will need or use in their music. Each listener builds for himself a representation system to explain what he is listening to. The listener gives sense to the sound, not very different from cinema. Just a bunch of colors moving around, and you give sense to it through your perception. Often acousmatic music is called cinema for the ear. There is no aesthetic concept here. It's only a situation definition. Acousmatic music doesn't mean that you have to do music like this person or this person. And radio is by definition an acousmatic medium. How does acousmatic music listening work? How does acousmatic listening work? I will show you some examples of sounds, and we will discuss them. The first one. Okay, it goes out for 5 minutes like that. What is it? It's a recording of a street activity. If you're keen listeners and you know it's Paris, how can I recognize it's Paris? Because the buses make a special noise. And then I don't know if you remarked, I was talking also there. So I could ask myself, is this music? Many of you will say, no, this is just a recording of the street. I would say it all depends on what I do with it. if I present it as a work, 15 minutes of Paris, and I call it Paris, then you will have to suffer it. It's my problem as a composer. I'm convinced of what I'm doing, and it's your problem as a listener not to fall asleep or to leave the room because you find that there's nothing in it. What is not in it? There is very little information. And our brain is it's always wanting information. When there's no information, we fall asleep. A second example is more or less the same thing. Here, Teruggi is getting better because I recognize it's a piano. Finally, we're in the musical domain. And then I recognize somebody is performing that piano. He's making something very repetitive. I can even, if I'm a music lover, imagine his fingers, 2 and 4, alternating through 2 notes. Then after 4 beats, they change to another one, then to another one, then to another one, then to another one. So look at the representation system that you put to work to listen to this. And most important, since after the second or the third change, you have followed the changes, you start anticipating what the future may be, based on your musical experience as professional listeners of music and everything. A contradictory example. Beautiful, by the way. Sorry for making the examples very short, but we are speeding. So this is a field recording, as they are called. I mean, somebody with a microphone recording sounds. There are many field recorders. There's all a category of acousmatic music dedicated to field recording. And field recording is main law or rule is you don't change anything. You don't cut anything. You just take a chunk of time and you make it listened to. As the street I proposed in the beginning. But here is a much more refined process. This work is called Almost Nothing, number 2, because there are several of them. And it's not called Almost Nothing, it's by Luc Ferrari. It's not called Almost Nothing because it's very small sounds. It's because he doesn't do much. Almost no activity, it could be called. But at the same time, he talks, he's with somebody, he discusses, and then there's all the evocation the sounds bring. It's nighttime, it's summer, it's in southern France, all those things that just open up our mind and our perception. We're really highly influenceable as listeners mainly because we don't have any visual support to what we're listening to. Now, okay, here we totally change the realm of sounds. Well, I think this is music. I mean, it behaves as music with evolution of and every now and then some kind of intermission of external sounds. Incrustation, as they are called. They're like things that change radically and then they go back to that. When we discover there's a musical intention, we start listening to it in a different way, as in the following example, made with totally different sounds. Imagine you leave the concert room and you find a friend and he asks you, where have you been? I've been in a concert, and what did you listen to? Well, I listened to some music. Can you tell me how it was? So how was this music? What happened? There was a kind of first very strong attack, and then a very slow glissando. What is interesting is that during this glissando, a very slow glissando, when we are almost asleep, something emerges from down and goes up and makes a kind of explosion. Your friend will imagine whatever he imagines, but well, it's a kind of description. Now, what is interesting? Descending glissandos are falling objects, even if they're not objects, but they're perceived as falling situations. And when something is falling, we know what's going to happen. After a certain amount of time, it will get to the bottom and it will stop. So we concentrate the listening time. Actually, we're not listening to the glissando. We're waiting for something to happen. And then what happens? Something starts from out and makes a ascending glissando, which all of a sudden, I'm being a bit poetical here, opens our mind to new possibilities in the evolution of music. How does acousmatic listening work? There's one word which is used a lot in our domain, is real sounds, artificial sounds, synthetic sounds. What is a real sound? If we are really strict, anything that we listen to is a real sound. There's nothing as unreal sounds. But there has been a kind of implicit definition that sounds that we can recognize as coming from real everyday life are real sounds. And the sound we just listened to, the glissando, is not a real sound, because you don't find that every day in your common listening experience. So it's a kind of very loose definition, but very useful because we can play with reality. For example, I have 3 examples to show to you. What happened here? We had the previous sound, and we had the first sound, the recording of the street, plus a low frequency, kind of like a double bass or something like that. Actually, our perception doesn't know very well where to go, to what to listen to. It's ambiguous. We jump from one thing to the other. Then little by little, things started clarifying. The street disappears, the low frequencies disappear, and we just get the electronic sounds, let's call them that way. Or I can't play at all. This is my most famous piece of music. It has been remixed and replayed in different situations. People have written to me, it's 2 minutes long. I put it in a continuous play for hours. I mean, it's a real... So, what is it about? Okay, the first impression is it's children running, a kind of desperate run. And then there's a little motto behind. And then every now and then there's a child saying something. The children's voices are real. The running is not real at all. The running is made with people, a bunch of people climbing a stairways in a place with some reverberation, and then just doing this by hand, chopping it by hand. And it gives the impression that somebody's running in one direction, in another direction. And then if I perform it here, sometimes they would run there, they would run there, they would run in different locations. So here it sounds real, but it's not real. Now here I'm going to make you listen to this, and you should, in your mind, try to guess the name. So, where are we here? Are we in the water? Are we in the air? Are we in outer space? Actually, everything is open as a possibility for our perception. Because we're listening to this, trying to identify the sounds and to find a kind of origin to them. Then there are these long silences, and pew! Then 10 seconds of silence and another sound. Actually, for me, it is air. The masses of air that every now and then move around. This is why a title, the name of the work, may be important for your perception. If I made a word called birds. When you start listening, your perception says, okay, he calls it birds. Where are the birds? We prepare ourselves to perceive in a certain way. If you call it X142, there's no perception pre-listening as when you have a real title. Almost finished. How do we listen to acousmatic music? Actually, when we listen to sound, we're seeking two informations. First, what is it? And second, what is it doing? Dog. That's my first identification. Then, angry dog. Happy dog. That is, what is it doing? So our perception first tries to capture like a photo of the sound and try to see what it looks like. What is it? And then starts following what it does. It's a very active way of listening, to which we should add space in the case of music. Where is it located? Is it coming towards me? Is it going? Is it moving? Is it static? Space is a very important dimension. That is why we have all these loudspeakers. Just to play with space, or to have music in which space is already moving around. Is it difficult to listen to acousmatic music? The answer is no. It is an auditive experience in which the listener invents or imagines possible origins for the sounds, as well as a dramaturgy to explain their development through time. You build a story in your mind to try to give sense to all that you have been listening to. This happens, there's a word missing there, within the perceptual experience of the listener, which is highly trained through daily life of sound listening and potentially musical. Our perception is accustomed to work with images. If I say piano, I don't need to show you the instrument. I don't need to play a note on it so you can identify it. You already had a visual and an acoustical image of what a piano is. For the sounds we just listened to, we don't have any acoustical or visual image of what it is. But we try to build it independently of what it is. This is the great richness and originality of acousmatic music. And our perception works with images, so we start creating images when listening to unknown sounds or situations, and our ears and mind accept these events as music. Pierre Schaeffer, of which I made a conference last year, used to ask, when does music begin? When it is done or when it is heard? This is a shared responsibility. It's you who have to build the sense of music. It's my responsibility to try to transmit you a sense, but it's you are the final judges. Normally, my presentation ends here. But 2 days ago, there was a wonderful interview in a French, very popular newspaper of François Bell, one of the pioneers of acousmatic music and the one who really brought the word up to the surface. And he gives this wonderful definition I want to share with you. It is a strange kind of music because one cannot grasp the origin of the sounds, which are like ghostly entities wandering through space, suggesting deceptive casualities. Deceptive because it may not be what you think. For no sooner does one seem to have found a clue than it is contradicted by another event, calling upon different resources of the imagination. It is an invisible music. Casual relations are suppressed and replaced by reminiscences created by the listener himself. Responsibility to you. So that each person has his own way of hearing it. One should not be afraid to say that all this is strange. François Bell. Thank you very much.